Welcome to the Rooted Woman Project, where we are gathering together the modern and ancient wisdom being shared by the women who nourish the world. I get to introduce you to Anna Cantwell. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited that you're here. Anna is one of the dearest soul sisters that I met in Sedona, and we had a weekend of a lifetime.
Yes.
And she is by far one of the most dynamic, vivacious, and energetic human beings I've ever had the chance of meeting. Anna is a spiritual life and business coach who spends her days intuitively guiding spiritual women to manifest wildly authentic, abundant lives and businesses that feel epic, liberating, and most importantly, yours, which I think is the key to any successful life and business, is really making it the expression of you and yours. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
This
Thank you
is
so much
gonna,
for having me. I'm so excited to get back in the game.
oh my gosh, you have so much to pour into the game. So I'm so excited I get to really dive into your heart and your soul.
Mhm.
Um, like I mentioned already, we met in Sedona, but I feel like there were just so many amazing experiences that we weren't able to sit one-on-one with everybody.
Yeah.
And so I'm especially excited to get to know um, just you on this more personal level and like dive into your magic because selfishly, I want to like soak myself in it. So
No, not selfish at all. There's plenty here to share.
well, I would love to first start off because I know who you are, but I'd love for the everyone watching if you could just share a bit about your life experience, how you got to where you are, how did you cultivate your own magic, and just share your journey with us.
Yeah. I think it's pretty surprising for people who have met me more recently that I used to be the most anxious, depressed, just hot mess express. Like it was bad. Indecisive. Oh my God. I was so disconnected from my intuition, from my body. I was so stuck in my head. Um, I grew up with a lot of religious dogma that didn't leave a lot of room for other modes of spirituality. I was very controlling. I had an eating disorder that was about restricting food and control, right? And then anxiety and all of those things. It's so interesting to just reflect on now because it's so far from my experience in this moment. But I
Mhm.
share it to let people know that, you really can make leaps and bounds. And some of those things were not that long ago.
Wow.
Um, within the last decade of my life, some of them.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
for me, the path started through the body. And
Hmm.
I think it does for a lot of people. I had chronic stomach pain as a teenager. I was
Wow.
told that I was just going to be in pain for the rest of my life.
Oh, wow.
And I just said no. I don't accept that.
Yeah.
One of those moments when it's like, you have to sort of write your own destiny and you can't let people tell you how it's going to be. And I just refused to believe that. I was like, no way. And, they gave me basically prescription Tums and different things. And they said I had IBS and yada, yada. But what really turned the tides for me actually was using cannabis
Mhm.
and also removing, ibuprofen, Advil, because I
Hmm.
was prescribed a ton of it for painful
Mm.
periods. And
Oh,
so
interesting. Yeah.
I had the gut brain connection of all my anxiety making my stomach hurt, and then my stomach hurting, telling my brain something's wrong, right? And then it just creates this awful loop. Anyone who's ever had stomach issues, you know how your stress and your brain affects your stomach. And yeah, I just remember going to all these specialists and none of them said anything about that.
Mm.
And I'm really, really lucky. Actually, my mom studied psychology and she said, I think we need to put you in therapy for
Oh,
this stress thing. And I think maybe that might help some of your stomach stuff. And it definitely did. It got me to a point. But after that, my next big challenge was in college, where I experienced a lot of sexual trauma. And that was one of those things. It was like already an anxious
Mm-hmm.
person, and
Mm-hmm.
then you have these, very acutely traumatic events, especially to your body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if anyone's familiar with, the trauma work, Bessel van der Kolk, Body Keeps the Score, that kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
that it impacts your brain, it's stored in your body,
Yeah.
and really, like, it the only way out is through,
Right.
the only
Right.
way beyond that. um so that was a very, very challenging time in my life that I had to face head
Uh-huh.
on, but it also taught me something super, super important.
Mm.
Um, because I think I really, it was really hard. I was like not getting out of bed. I had like a mental health, basically where I could take less classes but be considered a full-time student. I had to like take a mental health
Mm.
underload. I quit my jobs. I was working like 3 jobs all of college because
Wow.
why not, right? Got to make it work. And yeah, it was a time that just taught me that I can do anything. I was
Right.
like, if I can face this horrifying thing like head on,
Yeah.
um, then I can do anything.
Wow.
And that period of my life, I have to look back, and as maybe it sounds messed up, but I have to look back in gratitude because it taught me how fucking strong I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It showed me what's at my core, and that like nothing can hold me back.
Right.
So it was a very painful lesson. I describe it like being like body slammed by the universe. It was just
Yeah.
thing after thing after thing of very just intense experiences.
Yeah.
um and I can also acknowledge the role now. I can acknowledge the role
Yeah. Yeah.
many
Yeah.
years later that
Right.
I played in that, and that the beliefs that were instilled in me about men, about sex, about control over my own body,
Mm.
sexual empowerment, those kinds of things, or the things that weren't taught to me, really,
Right.
but
Right.
also the negative beliefs, how
Right.
that really shaped my worldview,
Right.
and and I think in many cases it made me a really, a good target. My self-esteem was just in the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know it's
So
so,
hard to imagine you like that.
right?
Yeah.
But I have to tell people because it is, it's not who I am, and it doesn't serve me personally any longer to claim those things as my identity.
Right.
Um, but it was a part of my path that really supported me. And after college, I really decided, you know what? I have to move away. I have to leave this here, and it's time to move on.
Right.
And if I stay, depressed and low, like they win.
Right.
And I'm like, if you really want to get like revenge on someone, live
Mm-hmm.
a fucking amazing life. It's the best way to do it.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Have a beautiful life. So that was what I kind of committed to
Wow.
after that. And it really shifted. It took time,
Yeah.
definitely,
Yeah.
but it shifted things. And that's brought me to kind of my next phase in life where I really started, I would sort of say, waking up. I think I was one of those people who was born, and kind of like my third eye was open. I was very, very open. I was very connected to nature. As a kid, I was very connected to animals. And
Mm-hmm.
then I just got, traditional schooling,
Mm-hmm.
anxiety, all of this stuff, I think
Mm-hmm.
really shaped me.
Yeah.
But in my early 20s, getting out of school, getting out of the area that I was in was really supportive. And yeah, I ended up in Houston, Texas. Don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily recommend it, but it was a new place, it
Uh-huh.
was a new chapter, and I think that was really important for me to be in a
Yeah. Yeah.
new
Yeah.
a new area.
Yeah.
And I was a school teacher,
Oh.
and I taught high school English. And it's so funny because at that time I was like basically a life coach.
Yeah, right?
I think everyone has like the English teacher who was like your BFF life coach who was like you would tell
Yeah,
all your problems to and be like, what
yeah.
do I do? And ask for advice. Um, and that was also where I met this really amazing woman who worked at my school and was teaching yoga to students, was having them
Mm.
read the four agreements and all of this
Wow.
stuff. And I was like, this is too freaking cool. And
That's
yoga was something I had kind of always been interested in. I had kind of dabbled in it. But I started, once I moved there, it became my kind of number one
uh-huh.
self-care practice. And I just dove into it. And
Yeah,
it was the only time in the day that I wasn't, you know, worried about something or stewing on ruminating on something
yeah.
or stressed, it was the only time. And so I really dove into yoga and I started talking to this teacher at my school and she was like, I think you need to meet these people. And their names are Dan and Christina Houston, who just happen to live in Houston, just a coincidence. And I went to they were teaching kind of like a yoga workshop.
Hmm.
And I went and they were just amazing. And it was one of those moments where you're like, I want what they're having.
Yeah.
Like, whatever they're on, give me
Yeah.
that.
Right. Right.
They just had so much peace, so much integrity. They were entrepreneurs, they had a nonprofit. Like, I was like,
Wow.
this is really rad.
Yeah.
So I took their yoga teacher training. And it
Uh-huh.
was amazing because of their background, have some background in landmark, if you're familiar, and
Yep.
coaching. And so kind of all of that coaching stuff was really weaved in to
Mm-hmm.
my yoga teacher training. And because I also had my master's in teaching and was comfortable in front of a room, and this
Right.
is a side note, but I also did coaching in college. I was a academic coach, helping people reach their
Yep.
goals and stay on
Yep.
track and all of this, and a writing coach. And so it
Wow.
just everything just meshed and it really cracked me wide open.
Yeah.
And it really helped me heal a lot of the body trauma that I had
Mm.
experienced because it was getting into your body. And it's so empowering, in yoga when you're like, wow, I can do this pose and look at what my body can do. And
Yep.
you see your progress. And
Hmm.
um, it was just, and then of course, it's also the mindfulness piece and the breath
Yep.
piece and the
Yeah.
spiritual piece. So it really was everything that I needed at that time.
Yeah.
And with their guidance and with their mentorship, I knew I didn't want to be in Houston anymore. And I was like, I can't be a school teacher and this is making me way too stressed out. And
Yeah.
it's just having a negative impact on my physical and mental health.
Right.
Um, I decided to move to LA,
Ah.
and huge, huge shift. I'm like 24.
Yeah.
I pack up my Toyota Camry. I know, right? Go out to LA. I'm like, have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm like, have so much faith. And you know what? This is really cool, actually. Um, on the way out there, I had a friend from Houston who was moving to Utah at the same time, like Zion area.
Uh-huh.
And we sort of caravan together and we camped and stopped in Sedona. And that was the first
Oh,
time I had ever been to Sedona. And I was like, what is this place? It's so magical, having all these visions.
oh
We
wow.
skinny dipped in a creek, it was, yeah.
I'm getting chills.
So
Yes.
I know. So that was my first time there. And I mean, really everything in my life was opening up at this time.
Yeah.
This was a few months before, but through a series of events, I was on a trip actually to Colorado,
Mhm.
and my friend's half brother's girlfriend introduced me to Abraham Hicks, taught me
Oh
what
yeah.
manifestation
Yeah.
was, and I had never heard about any of that. So
Wow.
I'm like, my head is like exploding.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it was amazing. And
Yeah.
it was just one of those times when you're like, everything is opening up and you're like, I have no fucking clue how I'm gonna figure this out, but I did.
Yeah.
And LA was another whole magical portal. in and
Yep.
of itself, but that's where I did my meditation teacher training. I
Mm.
started having one-on-one clients. I was doing corporate meditation. I was teaching tons of yoga. I led a retreat in Mexico, like all these amazing pieces of the journey. And
Yeah.
it didn't all happen at once, but it
Right.
just kind of slowly started to come through.
Right.
And I think I really started to see, damn, I'm like really good at this manifesting thing. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
this is awesome. This is
Uh-huh.
so much fun. I'm like, I dream it, it happens, I write it down, it manifests. Like, this is really cool. And I think that's all part of you just start to see your power and that we're
Yep.
really, really powerful, creative beings,
Yep.
you know?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just wild. So I'm gonna did a ton of meditation because I was doing my teacher training. Later, I got my hypnotherapy certification, tapping, a bunch of other stuff. And it was just all through learning and taking clients. My business is growing and it's like
Mhm.
happening. And then the pandemic happens.
Mm.
It's
There's
like,
like that point in everybody's
ooh,
journey where it's like the pandemic happened. Right?
right?
It's like dun dun dun.
Yeah, right. Cue. We need some music here. I'm
Yeah.
like, send it to Jake. He'll add it in. Some
Okay,
dramatic tune.
yeah.
And it was at that time I had been really wanting to basically be 100% virtual in my
Yeah.
business. So, and all the studios closed. So I lost my two biggest sources of income at the time,
Mhm.
which was my corporate meditation
Uh-huh.
and my yoga teaching. And
Mhm.
so I was like, "Whew, okay, I guess we're like really for real doing 100% just coaching." Like
Right.
I had been doing it the whole time, but I had never just relied on that. And I think
Right.
there's really something, entrepreneurs out there, I'm sure you feel me, just relying 100% on your generated income from your business,
Yeah.
not like cobbling together, the right combination anymore. And
Mhm.
so I did something so wild and so scary. And I hired a business coach and joined a mastermind. And it
Yeah.
was more money than I had paid for anything. And I
Yeah.
was just like,
You're
and
like,
it
what?
was, yeah, what am I doing? Like I said, just lost like all this income. And it was just so wild to see how I was so provided for.
Um,
Like every month, I swear, every month, the exact amount that I needed to pay for it came through in the randomest ways. Like
yeah.
I had booked, I was going to lead a retreat with a program that I had created. And of course, with COVID, it got canceled. And so I got like the refund from the place that I had booked that was
Mhm.
like the first month. And it
Mhm.
was just so crazy to see every month it just came through perfectly.
Right.
Um, this was also the time that I started working on animal guides
Yeah.
and doing the Kickstarter for animal guides to raise the initial, 10K to get them printed, get it going.
Mhm.
And so yeah, 2020 was also the year that Jake and I fell in love. We were friends before.
Oh,
I
wow.
was we really got brought together. So I know it was kind of a rough year, but it was like the most amazing. It was my first six-figure year in my business, launch of animal guides, met Jake. Like
Mhm. That's huge.
I know.
It's like this intersection of all of this beautiful things like
Yeah.
culminating at once.
Yeah. And I really feel like it was because of all of the deep
Yeah.
spiritual work that I had done prior. I
Yeah.
was like, when COVID came, I was like, I have been literally training for this.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have been like training and prepared to like, do what I need to do to make it through, not just make it through this time, but like to really thrive
Yeah.
in this time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm like, this is the quickest I've ever told all of this. But yeah, long story short, COVID was getting really hairy in LA
Uh-huh.
and it was not really feeling aligned to be in the city anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The city gave me so many amazing connections and
Mhm.
education. And I mean, there's, yeah, so many friendships and my husband and
Yeah.
all of that. But it was I was feeling, like ungrounded, unrooted, and I'm such a nature gal. I was like, what if I could move to Joshua Tree?
What
And
if?
what if? And I found this place online that was, I think, listed maybe month to month, and it was furnished, but I couldn't afford it on my own. And
Mhm.
then Jake and I got together, and I was like, hey, so I know
Hmm.
we just started dating and decided that we're going to get married, but what do you think about moving to Joshua Tree? And he's like, I'm down. I'm like,
Nice.
great, let's do it.
Yeah.
Um, so we moved to Joshua Tree. It was such an amazing decision because, I mean, that house held so much for us. We
Mm-hmm.
recorded so much music there. I had clients come out for, mini retreats and
Mm-hmm.
psychedelic ceremonies. And it was just, yeah, it was such a special portal,
Mm-hmm.
especially during the pandemic, because I think people
Yeah.
felt safer. We were like kind of out, we were out in the middle of nowhere,
Right.
so people could still come out and see us. And
Yep.
yeah, it was just a really, really amazing time of my life. I feel like my business grew a lot
Mm-hmm.
then as well. Created different programs, added more offerings,
Yeah.
um, getting animal guides like
Mm-hmm.
fully printed and ready to roll. Yeah, and with that year we got married, and it was, yeah, a lot of great things. But
So many good things.
in this whole thing, I just want to reflect that there's a lot of faith that was required.
Yeah. Yeah. That was like one of the things I was really wanting to point out about what you were saying is that you said you were prepared. And I think that's so big,
Mhm.
right? Like, I think there can be this undertone when it comes to manifestation that I feel like people like especially like in the Abraham Hicks community, and then you bring in like
Mhm.
manifestation, that there's like, okay, just think the positive thoughts and
Mhm.
just write your things down and make your vision board and it will just naturally come to you.
Mhm.
But one of the things I hear you really communicating is that you were prepared, like you were doing the work. It's not
Yeah.
like you just sat at home and laid on your bed and like
No.
wrote out these lists. Like
No.
you met the universe halfway, right? Like
Yeah.
you poured yourself out there and you put yourself out there, and that allowed you to receive and be aware of receiving, which I think is such a beautiful distinction.
Mhm. Yeah.
And yeah, did you want to?
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say, like, there's, a huge part of my work that I've come to call like heaven meets earth,
Yeah.
I always will put the spiritual and the energetic foot first. And
Yeah.
I do want to tell some really cool recent stories about basically, like, you know, ostensibly literally doing nothing and
Uh-huh.
having things come through.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it happens, right?
Yeah.
But I was doing the healing work on myself, right? I was like not shying away from the fears and from the
Right.
demons and from the limiting beliefs, and like, and the one of the things that I'm the most grateful for in my whole journey was, in my original yoga teacher training, there was a huge focus on integrity.
Mm,
And if you have a certain definition, integrity is manifestation. It's
mm,
doing what you say you're going to do. And
yes,
so you're
totally.
speaking these things out.
Yep.
And there was, people started to trust me that when I said something, I really fucking meant it,
Right.
even if it felt like, whoa, that's crazy. And, for years before, for example, animal guides was in existence,
Uh-huh.
every chance I met, there's another animal deck called the Medicine Cards. It's a beautiful deck. It was like a huge original inspiration for me. It has tons of Native American wisdom. It's just glorious. And every chance I got, I would pull an animal card for people, even
Ah,
if they were like, "What the fuck is that?" or "I don't
right.
even know what it is." Right?
Right.
And for a long time, it wasn't like I was like charging money. I was just like, friends were coming over and I was pulling them cards, and you
Right.
know what I mean? It was just such a natural outpouring, and I wanted to get better and I wanted to learn the
Yep.
symbolism and the mythology.
Yeah.
And then I would just always tell people, I'm going to have my own deck. I'm going to have my own animal deck, like, of
Yep.
course.
Yeah.
And people fucking believed me, and
Yeah.
people who because I was, like you said, doing the work, showing up for it.
Yep.
And so there's a part of manifestation that is like, it is just integrity. It's doing what you say you're going to do. So
Yeah.
if you have big, bold visions, yes, queen, say them, speak them. I like share them with people, please, boldly,
Yeah.
and share them before they're in physical existence. It's
Yes.
really, really powerful. I can't tell you how many times I was like, with my friends, like talking about my soulmate or talking about my business or all of these things, right? I fully believe in that. And then you just have to listen to what action is guided,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
discern what am I doing that I feel like I need to do to be a good girl, good entrepreneur, good whatever, versus what do I genuinely feel called to do,
Yeah.
and animal guides, that was a calling. My
Yeah.
music, that was a call. That was like, it was like I couldn't not do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That
So
was how
exciting. Yeah.
strong it felt.
Yes.
And same thing with my whole business. But I feel like that's it's such an important piece, and I'm so grateful for that foundation
Yeah.
in my training,
Yeah.
because then it's like all of the other stuff on top is just fun and amazing, and like, let's see if we can talk to some galactic beings, and let's see,
Yeah.
what I mean, let's see what we can create in our dreams, like our sleeping dreams. And
Yeah.
then there's so much fun to be had from
Yeah.
there, and
Mm-hmm.
amazing places to explore. But
Yeah.
I do think the foundation is really important, and I think
Yeah.
the rooted, grounded foundation of like, I'm going to be a person who in my life, what I say is going to match up with what I do. I
Yeah.
think that cannot be overstated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like the- I see what you're saying as like these two levels where this is where I feel like doing the personal work is so important because
Yeah,
it creates this foundation where you get to know what are the stories that have been programmed in your mind that maybe keep you into these like more limiting spaces. And,
totally.
because you mentioned something, I think it was on your website, the soul values, right?
Hmm.
Where it's like, we oftentimes come from our mental frame of what should we do or what should we not do, which is so influenced by our unconscious programming.
Right.
And so it can be extremely difficult to discern, is this a soul value or is this some kind of externalization of this internal programming that I'm doing?
Oh
And
my
that's where
gosh.
I feel like doing that personal work and having coaches, mentors, therapists, guides who can support you in being able to discern that
Hmm.
that's the foundational piece, right?
Yes, totally. I mean, that's soul values are really the place that I start with
Mhm.
any client that comes to me, because it's the foundation.
Mhm.
And in I don't think it has a name. But right, there's a hierarchy, right? That's like, and at the very top is your values and beliefs. And
Uh-huh.
so everything, your thoughts, your actions, your behaviors, your habits, your words, all of that trickles down from there. So you can say like, I'm going to change my speech, right? And
Right.
I think there's totally something to that. I'm a huge fan of like language precision and being conscious of the words that you're speaking.
Totally.
And if you're not shifting the value system or the belief system, it's really, really tough to make those lasting changes, the
Yes.
sustainable transformation,
Yep.
not just the overnight, look, I manifested this one thing, or,
Yep.
I don't know. I feel like there's a huge emphasis in just the coaching industry right now that's it's not sustainable. This
Uh-huh.
overnight
Oh, yeah.
millionaire
Yeah.
whatever situation, and I'm not about it. And I just love that the people that come to work with me are so here for the long-term transformation.
Yes. And that's what I think. So I love that you say that because a lot of the women that I work with, they're also going through I mean, I feel like life always gives us these small thresholds and these portals to kind of move,
Totally.
right? And so first, I feel like the first threshold to cross is that one of fear and the control. Like, well, what is going to happen next, and how can I plan for it, and what do I need to do now, right?
Yeah.
And then there's like this inkling of surrender that kind of has to move in.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, there's something more at play here than what I can influence directly. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
these spiritual guides and energy and the quantum field, like all of the stuff
Mm-hmm.
that is in support, right? And so it's like formulating that relationship.
Yeah.
But I feel like for you, one of the things I was curious about, like as you were talking about, going through all these difficult experiences, like from your childhood and your body and the sexual trauma, some people would go through those things and stay stuck in it.
Yeah.
Like what were some of the things that kind of opened your eyes to actually realizing or even acknowledging there was a spark inside, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, for sure. I'm like, my mind jumps to like, no thanks to the people who like totally turned their backs on me in the hardest time of my life, but like send you love. Um,
yeah.
you know, but I mean, I think there's one layer of it, which is I have always had an inner perseverance,
Yeah.
whether that was like, going after a goal that I wanted or something that I dreamed of and really staying focused on it. So
Yeah.
I do believe that there's an inner perseverance
Yeah.
within me. And I also, yeah, I have to say, I really think that some of my psychedelic usage
Mm-hmm.
at the
Mm-hmm.
time
Yeah.
also really supported my growth. It was like
Mm-hmm.
one part perseverance, and by the way, from by way of spirit, right? Like
Yeah.
all of this is because like spirit is just, looking out for me, infusing me.
Yeah.
But one part perseverance, right? One part, not even in the most conscious way, but using psychedelics and having a little support in seeing new
Yeah.
neural pathways, right? And
Yeah.
creating that and healing from that trauma. And
Yeah.
then also one part just like facing it dead
Yeah.
on. I
Yeah.
think I think really like I, I a little bit of running and avoiding, but I really wasn't like that. I really was like, I need to face this. I need to stand up for myself, even though it's so fucking hard,
Right.
even though it's like the hardest thing I've ever done. It's like the hardest thing I've ever done, like to this day, hands down, was
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the psychedelics I really do think supported me
Uh-huh.
in shifting through that. I don't want to say quickly because there's still, of course, I mean, there's still layers that
Yeah.
I move through,
Right.
when it comes
Right.
to sexual trauma, it just goes so deep.
Yeah.
Um, but I think at the time, some psilocybin, it really supports
Mm-hmm.
just the new neural pathways, healing from PTSD,
Mm-hmm.
and doing it in ways that were, I would say, it wasn't like I was sitting down with like a me now who's like guiding the entire experience and setting it up, but it was in fairly intimate settings with
Mm-hmm.
people I trusted or in nature, and it
Mm-hmm.
it it wasn't like with the intention of like, let's fucking get blasted. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think it was really with the intention of like, let's explore,
Right.
right?
Right.
um and yeah, and so going through that period, I think it really helped. And I think that's part of
Yeah.
a reason why I, facilitate and, for lack of a better term, trip sit now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
I'd love to hear more about that.
yeah,
What do you
yeah,
do to create that ceremony?
totally. So, I mean, it's very, very sacred to me because I will say the huge thing, anything can be abused,
Mm-hmm.
work can be abused, exercise can be abused, like just because, certain psychedelics aren't like addictive, they can, of course, still be abused,
Mm-hmm.
but honor the medicine, and when I started having really, really deep healing experiences for myself with my friends, especially once I moved to California.
Mhm.
It started to open up a lot more.
Mhm.
Um, it really shifted things for me. And I just couldn't help but thinking, Anna, you're really good at holding space. You have a lot of training in space holding from literally, being a teacher. I've basically been in the teaching space holding role since
Yeah.
I was in like third grade. Like I have been doing that kind of energy of facilitation for a long time.
Yeah.
And so I think it felt really natural to me. And then, so it started out doing for friends and having really good experiences. And then it just kind of went from there and became really like an offering. And
Uh,
I just kind of honed it as I went. I always have people fill out just, what are things that trigger you positively,
mhm.
sights, sounds, smells that relax you, that soothe you? What are
Mhm.
things that trigger you negatively? So I can literally set up the whole space,
Yeah.
whether it's like my home or an Airbnb. And I'll
Mhm.
always make sure to go through the whole space. Like I'm just thinking of times when I was facilitating for someone at an Airbnb and they'll just be like a really weird looking like vinyl. And I'm like, let's just tuck this away.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
this
yeah.
doesn't need
Yeah,
to be out.
right.
So, setting, right, is one of those big factors. So really making the setting, bringing, my crystals, my cards, my instruments, all of
Mm.
that, making sure there's plenty of water, when they're if and when they're ready to eat, like fruit, like
Mhm.
just really taking care to set it up.
Mhm.
And then also, I ask that folks abstain from things like alcohol a few
Mhm.
weeks prior, meditate daily prior, just so that
Mhm.
they're in the best mindset
Right.
possible to
Yeah.
going into it.
Yeah.
Um, and then, of course, anyone that comes to me, I will also personally vet and just be like, this might not be the best time for
Right.
you to do this, or when I think this is coming at a perfect time for you.
Yeah.
And I always tell folks, even if it gets to the day of or we're right about to start, and if you have a feeling like genuinely I should not be doing this, then we
Yeah.
don't do it.
Wow.
And I follow that for myself for
Yeah.
psychedelic usage as well. I'm
Wow.
like, even if we planned a whole trip around it or whatever, like set up the whole day to,
Mhm.
be conducive to this, if I feel it in that moment and it's a no, then it's a
Yeah.
no. And
Right.
that's it. And that's honoring the medicine because it is so powerful. And
Mm.
that's what I love about it. It's so powerful and amazing. And you just have to treat it like the sacred thing that it is,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Really letting and setting that intention.
Yes, yeah. And so that was the coolest thing was that people, started coming to me because they're like, I want to heal. I want to move past this thing that I can't seem to kind of get past.
Yep.
Um, or I want to connect deeper spiritually.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if anyone's seen Fantastic Fungi, really,
Uh,
really great doc.
yeah.
Um, so amazing. But they talk about, the studies at Johns Hopkins
Hmm.
and people ranking these and it's kind of funny because they're like in a clinic and stuff,
Right.
but
Yeah.
like these psychedelic experiences as the top 5 most transcendental experiences of their life,
Yeah.
sometimes even past like the birth of their first child
Right.
or their marriage or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's so amazing to me that something can be so spiritually significant,
Yeah.
and also be so like demonized. But it definitely,
Yeah.
it's
Right.
interesting.
It is really interesting. And I think it also highlights how badly people want to get out of their heads.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know, like to get
Mhm.
out of that like constant cycle of thought and doubt and anxiety and worry and planning and anticipate like all the
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Right. And it's
Yeah.
like I've never done this particular plant medicine. So I'm like
Mhm.
so curious. And it's actually something I
Wow.
really, really wanted to do.
I'm like, let's talk, boo.
Right? Exactly. Like, and it, so I'm one of those people who is super anxious whenever
Mhm.
I do any kind of
Anything.
mind space altering. Like
Yeah.
that's actually why I never did like mushrooms in college or like I'm the girl who gets really anxious when she smokes pot. Like
Sure.
So the only experience I ever had was ecstasy, like, right, like going to the parties,
Mhm.
because that's like the
Yeah,
feel
for
good
sure.
one, right?
Yeah.
But to your point, I have always wanted to do it in the way that you're talking about, because I don't want to do it for like the fun, stay out till 3 in the morning and dancing to house music reason. I
Yeah.
want to do it to connect to parts of myself and my soul that aren't accessible in the day to day, and like
Hmm.
crack something open and learn something on a completely different level.
Totally.
So I love what you're talking about and how you create the space and how you put so much time and attention into it,
Yeah.
and what you've gotten from it. Like
Yeah.
it just really speaks to that desire to, I think, have that spiritual experience.
Totally. I mean, like I said, if I felt like, oh, this isn't that effective, or people don't really need this, I wouldn't do it. I'm
Right.
like, it's so effective. And you don't have to, like, I've done a hero's dose, which is 5 grams of mushrooms. Just to make it very clear, I'm not recommending this. This was for my own personal exploration.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, to your point about the thinking mind, I'm like, girlfriend, I am a Gemini moon. I'm like, in here, it is
Yeah.
wild. Like,
Right.
it is wild what's
Yeah.
going on in this head. And I've
Yeah.
always been that way. I remember like writing a poem in high school about having like washing machine thoughts that just like never stopped and just
Yes.
like kept
Yes.
going.
Yeah.
But I'm like, on this hero's dose, with someone with me who's sober and with a friend, and
Wow.
set it up very safely.
Yeah.
But I had no thinking mind, and I was just like
Wow.
like it was just so startling. Like, no, like, where are they going? What did they do? Are they having fun? Did they do this? Like, da 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 da, just like the thing. And I would consider myself an experienced meditator. For years I meditated for an hour every day. Now I don't do that much meditation anymore, but I've had my fair share of, being in the present moment awareness and with your breath and all of that. And this is just like thinking mind gone, you
Mm-hmm.
know? But also the other part of it, because your left brain is like not really online, is your words are like not there. And you're just like, words are hard. Like, how do I words right now? Like, you don't really, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and then you also feel this just incredible. Well, I felt this. I will say not everyone's experience is the same. And just for everyone to please keep in mind, in my lifetime, I've done 10 plus years of therapy,
Mm.
countless, self healing like modalities, like retreats, plan it, like it's the whole thing. I didn't just like one day wasn't just like, oh, I'm gonna just do 5 grams of mushrooms like
Right.
and
Right.
be fine,
Yeah.
yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you start to see how much of an illusion separation is,
Gosh. Yes.
very literally. And I mean, like,
Yes.
your arm is on the couch and you're like, what's my arm and what's the couch?
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Really cool.
So
And
cool.
that day, we had a friend who was also doing it and had a very different experience than me.
Mm.
Was in a lot of fear. He
Mm.
moved through it, which was really cool because I basically ended up like also, while being on 5 grams, facilitating for him and helping him move through these
Oh my
blocks, which
gosh.
was how I knew I need to keep doing this. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if I to just put it really simply, he was in like total fear and
Yeah.
I was in complete love. I was like, everything was love. I couldn't even comprehend what there could be to be afraid of.
Right.
I was like, what do you mean you're afraid? Afraid of what?
Right. Right.
And it was so mind-blowing for me. And I think that's
Yeah.
a huge piece of it, is that the playfulness that mushrooms bring and the childlike wonder and innocence.
Mm-hmm.
um how kids, like, a lot of times, like, they just seem kind of fearless,
Mm-hmm.
no,
Yeah.
and sometimes you're like, no, but we need, I need to protect them or these
Right.
things, right? And that's why you set it up safely, right? And you're doing this as an adult and all of
Yeah.
those things. But I think it brings us to some of that fearlessness that
Mm,
is innate to us,
mm,
because fear is not our natural state. Love is our natural state.
right.
And that's like, if you want to, if I'm ever just trying to sum up like the thesis of
Hmm.
all that I've learned, it's there's two paths, fear and love. And if it's the path of fear, there's more fear there to be had. And if it's the path of love, there's more love to be had
Yeah.
and created from that.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And I love that sense of connection too, where I feel like, I mean, like I said, I haven't done this particular experience, but I can relate to like my own meditation studies and getting
Yeah.
into these like higher states of consciousness where you're like, holy fuck, like I am connected to everything,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
it almost makes being in the human body challenging because it's like when
Yeah.
you're up and out of the body, everything makes sense. Everything
Hmm.
is love.
Yeah.
Everything feels connected. I'm not afraid of anything because I can feel the bigger web of the energetic, like
Yeah.
what's happening. And so
Yes.
it can be challenging. Was it challenging for you to integrate some of these lessons and experiences and roll them into the day to day?
Yeah, that's such a great question because, integrate, integrity, it's all
Yeah,
say the same, right? And
right,
so that's the other thing that I was seeing from people who were maybe going to Peru or Costa Rica
right.
and having these amazing experiences, and then they come back and then they're just like back in their life again, right?
Yes,
And
yeah,
so that's the other layer of, for me, what I believe is really necessary is having check-ins, integration calls after,
yeah.
multiple, right? Over weeks and sometimes months,
Hmm.
depending on the experience and depending on the person.
Hmm.
The integration piece is crucial
Yeah,
because, I mean, it's just like you can read an amazing book and be like, that was amazing, that changed my life, and then do nothing differently. And then what's the
right,
point, right?
right,
So
exactly.
it's really, really important for me. I'm thinking of a very specific time, which was really, really exciting. It was one of the most powerful healing experiences I've personally ever had. And it
Mhm.
was with mushrooms and just a little bit of pure MDMA. So
Mhm.
not like a pressed pill
Right,
ecstasy.
right.
Um, and I was by myself and I
Mhm.
was in my bed with my, eye mask on and my Bose headphones listening to East Forest's music for mushrooms. And it's like a 5 hour journey that
Holy
he
cow.
created to move you through this process. It's so beautiful and
Wow.
so interesting.
Yeah,
Um, and that was a moment, and I literally felt myself being tuned as by the universe, like a flute. Like I literally was like, I'm a flute and
oh
I'm
my
being tuned
gosh.
by the universe.
Yeah,
And then after that was when I released my first album and I started recording music.
gosh.
And it super opened up. And so that's one of those things that it really, really opened up for me.
Yeah,
Um, that it felt like, okay, I have the universe's almost like blessing to just
yeah,
go forth and give this
yeah,
gift
yep.
that I've been really wanting to. And it just
Mhm.
unlocked so much for me,
Mhm.
musically, in my voice. I know we've talked a lot about the voice
Yeah.
opening and how
Oh,
important it
oh.
is. Ah,
I
yes, the
keep it right
peacock.
here on my altar.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Oh,
Yeah,
it's
for
so good.
anyone watching, this is from her Animal Guides deck. It's the peacock. I pulled it when I was in Sedona, and it's all about your voice. I keep it right here on
Oh,
my altar space.
I love it. It's so perfect.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so that was one of those things that, it happened in this really powerful, intense experience, and
Mm.
then it became a thread of my whole life,
Yeah.
and it became something that I get to consistently offer, which I just love so much because it's music. I mean, music
Yeah.
is one of those other things. It just makes you feel connected. It allows you to be present,
Right.
both playing and just listening to music,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Um,
I feel like also what you're saying too with the mushrooms and meditation and this was my experience, is that when you have those deeper moments where you're really sinking in and feeling it, it's like you get that imprint in your body of the
Yes.
moment, and then it's a
Yes.
little easier to go back and feel like, oh, I can still feel the awakening, I can still feel that attunement, I can
Hmm.
still connect to it, as opposed to just like this thought,
Yeah,
you know.
totally.
Yeah.
100%. And it's really cool. There's some new research coming out that's showing that specifically mushrooms have long-term, like one use has long-term
Wow.
positive health impacts on
Wow.
things like your heart rate variability, which if
Mhm.
anyone's familiar with, it's pretty much one of the biggest indicators of health.
Wow.
And seeing that these effects like don't fade even after years. It's
Wow.
so cool.
That's really
And
cool.
I was just MAPS, which is the, psychedelic science organization. They had a survey, and I was taking their survey yesterday to just help them with some of my knowledge and
Yeah.
experience. And it's really cool to see how long lasting these effects are
Mhm.
because it's not like I'm doing this all the time. And
Right.
even,
Right.
cannabis super supported me in healing my stomach.
Wow.
And I would say I rarely use it anymore. And
Wow.
so
Yeah.
it's not one of those things where you're on a pill forever, or you have
Yeah.
to do
Totally.
mushrooms every
Yep.
month, or anything
Yep.
close to that.
Yep.
Um, I think, yeah, I think all of that goes along with like the lasting transformation. And I know we talked about this a little bit before we got on, but another one of my huge tenets in my business is a multi-pronged approach.
Hmm.
And so it might be that, we need you might still be meeting with your therapist and do coaching with me. And there might be some psychedelic usage, in that, or there might be none of that. And it might be you really just need to get in nature,
Right.
or it might be, you like journaling is super supportive for you, or something in your
Mhm.
diet needs to switch so that your hormones can be regulated. Like,
Right.
and that it's not about finding like a magic bullet or the
Right.
golden ticket to like
Yep.
finally fix or whatever, heal everything. It's about a lifelong journey
Yes.
of healing, and I would say emergence, allowing
Yes.
your soul's essence to fully emerge,
Yes.
unfettered from the blocks, the conditioning,
Yeah.
limitations,
Yes.
the truth of who
Yes.
you are blossoming naturally as it, was intended to, and as it knows how to, you
Yes.
know?
Exactly. So, to wrap up, I would love for you to share how people can find you.
Mhm.
We will, of course, be including all of your information in the notes below, so you'll be able to access her website, her Instagram handle. We'll connect you with the animal guides, and of course, your Spotify list, your Spotify channel. But is all of this kind of multi-prong approach something that you do more with one-on-one coaching? Is it also part of your Soul Shine program? Like, what do those two pillars look like?
Yeah, yeah. So, one to one, sometimes people need one to one when it's like going through a very specific, maybe something with your health, something in your life, something that you're grieving, and you really need that tailored support.
Mhm.
Or, you're at that next level and you're just like, I want to really expand.
Yeah.
And I'm ready to start tapping into light language. I'm ready to
Oh
start
gosh.
communicating with galactic beings. I'm
Yes.
ready to
Can I
start,
sign up? Like, yes,
yeah.
to all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so one to one is, either for very specific set of circumstances,
Yep.
or like I'm really ready, like my life is sweet and I'm ready to just invite in way more ease,
Right.
or really connect to that next level of trusting myself or my magic.
Right.
And then, in programs, I find some people actually go from one to one into a program because
Mhm.
sometimes in one to one you can hide,
Yeah.
because it's
Oh.
just because it's just the two of you.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to be as vulnerable. Of course, there's some vulnerability involved,
Right.
but in a group, there's totally something to be said for being witnessed and
Mhm.
having, as like we experienced in Sedona, like having everyone really witness you in your transformation and in your healing. And, in
Yeah.
Soulshine's case, because it's 6 months, in your expansion and growth over time. And think
Yeah.
about where you were before you started and where you are now.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, really in all of it, yeah, it's all multi-pronged approach.
Yeah.
And, all my clients get access to a resource that I created called the Healing Vortex, which
Mhm.
is basically a massive, like, searchable Google Doc of every, like, supplement I love, biohacking, any reading that I've ever gotten from someone who I would recommend, um, essential oils, like routines,
Wow.
ritual, like it's just a huge resource that I
Yeah.
created. Yeah, and so I
Amazing.
never I never wanted to like pick a lane.
Yeah. Why should
I
you, right? Like,
I never wanted to.
yeah. And I just have
No.
to say, you have such a skill at naming things. I mean,
Mm,
all of
thank
your like
you.
soul shine, the vortex, the your podcast, the quantum playground, like
Mm,
they're all just so fun. They're just like they just like ping in on exactly what you're gonna get, and it's like in
mm.
this such this cosmic language. It's just yeah, I love it.
Mm, I love that. Thank you. I received that. I mean, I've always been a words gal back in even the English teacher
Yeah,
days
right?
and poetry
Totally.
writing. So it's
Yeah.
all there. It's really amazing to just wake up and be like, oh my God, like everything that I've ever wanted to do, I get to do,
Yeah, exactly.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So getting back into the quantum playground has been an interesting journey because we moved to Colorado where we live now, which is a whole other, I'm like, I could talk to you for like 4 hours.
I know. We have to do like multiple segments.
Yeah, we totally can. I'm like, we haven't even touched on any of that.
I
Um,
know.
but yeah, so Quantum Playground has some really, really awesome episodes up there, and new ones will be coming. And that's, everywhere that you listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
And then music is just under my name, which is Anna Cantwell, spelled exactly like it sounds. And yeah, also new music is coming, which I'm super,
Woo.
super pumped for. I have a lo-fi album that has really beautiful mantras sprinkled in. So it's kind of like your
So good.
workflow, you're vibing, you're dropping into
Yep.
the flow state, and then it just has some nice little positive messages for you throughout. So
I love that. I
it's
love your
really, really
music too because it totally reminds me to it reminds me to look for the good, right? Like some of the
yeah.
best like word drops we got out of Sedona, like the coolest shit is always happening to me,
Yeah.
right?
Yes,
Like
it is.
it's just yeah, I mean the music is just so beautiful.
Mm,
Um
thank you. Yeah,
well, we will definitely do this again.
sounds
There's
great.
a ton more to talk about, but I just want to thank you for carving out the time and being here with us today.
Yeah.
And we'll make sure that everyone can funnel their way to you because Anna is definitely someone you want to have in your corner.
Oh, thank you.
So
Thank you so much for having me. This has been such a blast.
yeah.
My face hurts from smiling.
I
Thank you, everybody, for listening. And yeah, it's just been such a treat. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, and I'll see you next time.